Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The first thing I noticed was the warmth, quiet, sudden, and unmistakably close. 1 second, I was bent over the sink, hands buried in suds, the soft clinking of dishes filling the kitchen. The next, a presence hovered behind me, close enough that I could feel the shift in the air, the slow exhale brushing the back of my neck like a forgotten memory returning at the wrong moment, or maybe the right one. For weeks, my husband and I had moved around each other like polite strangers, sharing space, sharing routines, but not sharing us. Every touch was accidental. Every conversation was practical. Whatever spark we used to ignite with just a glance had faded into something quieter, something I thought maybe we both stopped reaching for. But right now, right here, something changed. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. His presence pressed gently against my back, steady and deliberate, not demanding, just there, like a question he didn't know how to ask out loud. I felt his breath slow, controlled, as if he were afraid any sudden move would break the fragile moment forming between us. The warmth of him contrasted with the cool ceramic beneath my fingers, making the small kitchen feel impossibly intimate. My own breathing shifted, unsteady, each inhale tighter than the last. A spark flickered low in my chest, surprising me with its insistence. Maybe it was the sudden closeness. Maybe it was the weeks of distance pressing in all at once. Or maybe it was simply the ache of wanting to feel connected again, to feel seen. His hand rested on the counter beside me, not touching but close enough that the space between us felt charged. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. Yet everything in the silence felt loud: memories, hesitations, longing, all tangled together in a moment too delicate to fully step into and too powerful to ignore. I swallowed hard, unsure if I should pull away, or lean in. Because for the first time in a long time, it felt like something was about to happen. Something neither of us was ready to name. But when I finally turned my head, just slightly, I saw his eyes already waiting for mine. And that was when everything shifted. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the faint drip of water sliding from my fingertips back into the sink. I could feel his presence behind me shift, just slightly, as if he were trying to decide whether to step closer or retreat altogether. That hesitation alone sent a ripple of warmth down my spine. When his hand finally brushed my hip, it wasn't intentional. At least, it didn't feel like it was meant to be. A tiny, quiet contact. Barely a touch. But it carried more meaning than anything we had shared in weeks. I froze, not to pull away, but because the air around us suddenly thickened, charged with something unspoken and fragile. I turned my head a fraction, not enough to meet his gaze fully, but enough to sense he was searching my expression. His breath grazed my cheek, unsteady but controlled, like he was trying to hold himself together. Slowly, carefully, he reached past me to place a clean glass on the counter, his arm brushing mine in a way that sent heat curling low in my stomach. It wasn't the touch itself, it was the intention beneath it. "Are you okay?" he murmured, his voice low, roughened by something he wasn't ready to admit. "I don't know," I whispered back, the words trembling before they left me. His fingers hovered near my waist again, not touching this time, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from them. My pulse thudded loudly in my ears. Every inch of space between us felt like it was slowly dissolving, replaced by a tension that neither of us dared to break. I moved the dish from my hands to the drying rack, my movements slower than necessary, aware of every shift, every breath, every glance he stole. When I straightened, my back brushed against him, lightly, unintentionally, but enough to make a quiet gasp escape me. He inhaled sharply. I felt, rather than saw, the moment he leaned in, just a fraction, his lips close enough to my ear that I could feel the warmth of his breath. The air between us crackled like it had been waiting, building, ready to spill over. "Tell me if I should step back," he whispered. I didn't answer. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. And just as the silence stretched tight enough to break, I felt him shift even closer, close enough that we both knew the next move might cross a line we couldn't step away from. The space between us felt too small now, too charged, too alive. I could sense him debating every breath, every small shift of his body, as if one wrong movement might send both of us tumbling past a point we couldn't rewind. His warmth pressed along the length of my back, not fully touching, but so close my body reacted to what might happen more than what was actually happening. I didn't dare turn around. I wasn't sure what I would do if I saw the look in his eyes, or what he would see in mine. His hand hovered near my waist again, trembling almost imperceptibly, as though he was fighting himself. That hesitation, raw, human, vulnerable, sent a pulse of heat through me stronger than any touch he could have given. I exhaled slowly, hoping the sound didn't betray just how much control I felt slipping. Behind me, his breath deepened. Slower. Rougher. Like each inhale was dragging him deeper into something he wasn't prepared to face but couldn't walk away from. The tension between us coiled tighter, like a thread being pulled without mercy. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, voice low and unsteady. "I can't," I murmured before I could think. The admission hung between us, fragile and dangerous. He leaned in, not enough to touch, but enough that I could feel the outline of his presence with startling clarity. His lips brushed the air near my jaw, close enough to make my knees weaken even though no contact happened. Every muscle in my body tightened, not out of fear, but out of anticipation so sharp it bordered on unbearable. His fingers grazed my hip, barely there, feather-light, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. My breath caught. I didn't move away. I didn't move at all. I felt suspended, trapped in the thin space between restraint and surrender. Seconds stretched, weighted and breathless. He tilted his forehead toward the back of my head, close enough that I could feel the heat of him sinking through me. "We shouldn't," he murmured, though the tremor in his voice betrayed how little conviction he had left. "I know," I breathed. But neither of us stepped back. The air pressed tighter, hotter, until it felt like the moment itself was trembling, ready to break, ready to spill forward into something neither of us could undo. And then, he moved. Just slightly. Enough that I felt everything inside me brace for the line we were about to cross. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls had leaned in just to witness the moment tightening between us. I could hear his breathing behind me, deeper than before, uneven in a way that matched the rising thrum beneath my own ribs. When I shifted the slightest bit, he froze, as if one more inch would snap whatever fragile grip he had on restraint. My heart hammered so loudly I wondered if he could feel it through the air between us. His hand, still hovering near my waist, trembled with a hesitation that wasn't fear, it was want, coiled so tightly it was almost painful to watch. Or maybe it was painful because of how much I felt it too. When I finally turned my head, just enough to catch him in my peripheral vision, his eyes were already locked on me. Focused. Intense. Searching for permission that I hadn't yet spoken but also hadn't denied. That look alone sent a wave of heat rolling through me, stronger than any touch he might have given. He leaned in, slowly, carefully, until the warmth of him wrapped around my shoulders like a whisper meant only for me. His breath grazed the side of my neck, not touching, not even brushing skin, but close enough to make my pulse jump. "We're right at the edge," he murmured, voice rough with restraint. "Maybe we've been here longer than we realized," I whispered back, surprised at how steady I sounded. The silence that followed felt electric. Heavy. A living thing coiling around us. He lifted his hand again, this time higher, the back of his fingers brushing my arms so lightly it felt like a spark dancing across my skin. I inhaled sharply, unable to hide the way my body reacted. His breath caught at the sound, and his fingers lingered just a heartbeat longer than they should have. Then he stepped closer. Just a fraction. But that fraction changed everything. His chest nearly touched my back now, the heat of him pulling me toward a gravity I didn't have the strength to resist. My hands tightened on the edge of the counter, grounding myself as the space between us thinned to nothing but intent. "Tell me if this is too far," he whispered, his voice barely holding together. I didn't answer. Because the moment had already tipped forward, slowly, dangerously, towards something neither of us could stop. And we were right there, breath against breath, on the brink of crossing it. The moment sat wrapped around us like heat, thick, breathless, impossible to step out of. His body hovered so close behind mine that every inhale I took seemed to pull him with it. I could feel the subtle tremor in his breathing, the way his restraint was thinning with every second we stayed frozen in that charged, delicate space. I didn't dare turn around fully. If I did, I knew exactly what would happen. His fingers brushed the back of my arm again, slow, deliberate this time. No hesitation. No accidental pretense. The touch was soft but bold enough to demand a response. My breath caught, sharp and audible, and I felt rather than saw the way he reacted to that tiny sound. He leaned in closer, his presence settling around me like a confession he hadn't spoken yet. "We're past the point of pretending," he whispered, his voice rough in a way I hadn't heard in months. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his breath skim the side of my face. My hands tightened against the counter, not because I wanted to pull away, but because I wasn't sure if my legs would hold me if he stepped even 1 inch closer. Then, a sudden thud echoed from the front of the house. We both jolted. Not away from each other, but instinctively tighter, as if the interruption itself was dangerous. His hand came to my waist, steadying me in a reflex he didn't seem fully aware of. I felt the strength in his grip, the way his fingers pressed with a protective urgency rather than desire, but the effect it had on me was no less intense. "What was that?" he breathed, his lips close enough that the words trembled against my skin. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The sound came again. Softer this time. Like a creak, or a footstep. My pulse spiked with a different kind of heat, fear mixed with adrenaline, tangled so tightly with the desire already burning between us that I couldn't separate one from the other. He stepped even closer, bracing one hand on the counter beside me, his chest almost brushing my back now. I felt surrounded, shielded, trapped in the best and worst way. "Stay here," he murmured. But I didn't move. Couldn't. His breath lingered near my ear for one suspended second too long. A second where neither of us cared about the noise in the house, the boundaries we were about to cross, or the consequences already forming in the air around us. When he finally straightened, his hand slid from my waist with a slow reluctance that sent a wave of heat spiraling through me. He took a step toward the doorway, pausing as if waiting for me to pull him back. I didn't. But he looked over his shoulder, with an expression that held everything we hadn't said and everything we were on the verge of doing. The house creaked again. And just like that, the tension shifted from intimate to dangerous, yet somehow even more intoxicating. Whatever, or whoever, had interrupted us hadn't stopped anything. It had only pushed us deeper into a moment neither of us could escape now. The house fell silent after that last creak, so silent it felt like even the air was holding its breath. My pulse thundered in my ears, my body still trembling from the moment he'd pulled away. I could feel the ghost of his hand on my waist, the heat of his breath near my ear, every sensation from the last few minutes still burning through me like embers refusing to die. He took one step toward the hallway. "Wait," I whispered. He stopped instantly. The word left my mouth before I understood why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe longing. Maybe both. But when he turned back toward me, everything we'd been holding back, everything we tried so hard to bury, rose to the surface with startling clarity. The distance between us wasn't real. Not anymore. He crossed the space in 2 steps, faster than before, the tension that had held him back snapping all at once. His hands came to the counter on either side of me, trapping me in a cage of warmth and intention. I inhaled sharply as he leaned close, closer than he had all night, the restraint that had defined every moment up until now finally shattering. "We can't pretend anymore," he breathed, voice low, fierce, raw. I looked up at him, really looked, and something inside me cracked open. Weeks of silence, months of distance, the aching weight of everything unsaid, it all surged forward in one unstoppable wave. And then the tension exploded. Not in touch. Not in action. But in everything else. We spoke at the same time, voices overlapping, both of us confessing in rushed, trembling words, anger, fear, longing, hurt, love, everything we'd buried erupting in a storm that left us breathless and shaking. His forehead rested against mine, our breaths tangled, our emotions spilling out faster than either of us could control. The release felt overwhelming, like a dam finally breaking. "I thought I was losing you," he whispered. "I thought you already had," I confessed. The truth hung between us, fierce and liberating. But before we could move, before we could step into whatever came next, a phone vibrated sharply across the counter. We both froze. The screen lit up with a name neither of us expected. A name that didn't belong in our house. A name that changed everything in an instant. The emotional climax between us had finally erupted. But the real shock was only just beginning. The phone's vibration seemed to echo through the entire kitchen, slicing through the heat that had wrapped around us like a second skin. The glowing name on the screen held both of us suspended, breath caught, hearts pounding, emotions stretched to their limits. For a long, heavy moment, neither of us moved. Then he reached for the phone. Slowly. Cautiously. As if touching it might ignite a different kind of explosion. When he turned it over and saw the message beneath the caller ID, his breath left him in a soft, almost relieved exhale. "It's just the contractor," he murmured, shaking his head. "The one who still hasn't fixed the back door." The tension in my chest loosened, not all at once, but in a steady unwinding that felt almost dizzying. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding myself until that moment. A nervous laugh escaped me, small but real. He let out one, two, raw, shaken, genuine. And then something shifted between us. Not sharp like before. Not explosive. But warm. Steady. Certain. He set the phone down and turned fully toward me. No hesitation. No hiding. His hands didn't touch me yet, but they hovered close, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from them. His eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen in months, like the storm inside him had finally cleared just enough to let me in. "We can't go back to how things were," he said quietly. "I don't want to," I answered, just as soft, just as honest. The closeness returned, not frantic this time, not dangerous, but powerful in a way that felt even deeper. My breath mingled with his, our foreheads nearly touching, the air between us thick with everything we finally understood about each other. His hand rose, stopping just short of my face, as if asking silently whether this was the moment we chose to move forward instead of backward. I leaned into the space, offering my answer without a word. The fire between us didn't explode again. It settled. Burned steadier. Hot enough to promise more. Controlled enough to last. For the first time in a long time, we weren't standing at the edge of something dangerous. We were standing at the beginning of something real. Something neither of us intended to lose again. And as his voice brushed the space between us, low, certain, quietly reverent, I felt the moment settle into my bones. "We start fresh," he whispered. "Together." The heat lingered long after, glowing through the air like an ember refusing to die.